Good morning. Thank you for attending the fourth webinar in our New Mexico Recovery Series. It wouldn't be a webinar if there wasn't some technical difficulties, so I hope everybody can hear me okay. The series is hosted by the New Mexico Economic Development Department in collaboration with the regional recovery coordinators around the state to offer information and resources to help New Mexico businesses and communities. My name is Jennifer Myers, and I am the Economic Development Department. For everyone that is registered for the webinar, I'll be sending out a recording and a copy of the slides. We may run out of time for questions, so feel free to use the question box, and we will address them at a later date. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to take a quick moment to mention the 7 recovery coordinators. Each region has a regional recovery coordinator available to assist and connect resources to business, local governments, and communities. And you can select your region listed on the slide, and you can contact your regional recovery coordinator.
Jennifer, your slide's not coming up on the screen, or I don't see it.
Oh. All right,
there it is.
Everybody see my, oh, good. I'm sorry about that, guys. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties. This is in 2020, the New Mexico Economic Development Department was awarded an EDA grant to assist with the economic recovery, but also to increase capacity. With the funds, we were able to hire 4 newly created positions known as the Recovery Squad. I am the statewide disaster recovery coordinator. My focus is economic recovery through direct outreach and help to coordinate efforts to facilitate business growth. I work closely with the Council of Governments and the recovery coordinators. Felicia DePaula is the program development specialist, and she's helping with a statewide plan and the Rural Efficient Business Program. Alex Greenberg is our financial program specialist, and he's the point person for funded projects as well as opportunity zones. John Winscott is our newest member of our team, and he is the economic and energy diversification coordinator. He supports renewable energy companies in New Mexico. All right, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight a few of our state programs. The first program is the Collateral Assistance Program, or CAP as we call it. The department encourages banks to make loans to small businesses in underutilized and underserved markets. The New Mexico Economic Development Department can pledge cash to cover a collateral shortfall of a loan in order to enable financing. This translates to cash support up to 50% of the principal with a max of $250,000 for under-collateralized loans. The uses for the funds can include tangible and intangible asset purchase, startup costs, working capital, equipment, and inventory. If you want to learn more, just click on the link on the slide. The LEDA recovery grants were created during the 2021 legislative session to provide $200 million in grant funding to New Mexico's small businesses that are experiencing financial hardship due to the pandemic. These grants are specifically tied to job creation, and they must be used as reimbursement of rent, lease, or mortgage payments. They are prioritized based on the severity of economic decline experienced by the business. This program is administered by the New Mexico Finance Authority on behalf of the New Mexico Economic Development Department. The change in legislation also includes restaurants and small retailers. For more information about eligibility and how the grants are calculated, please visit the New Mexico Finance Authority website. There's also another program that is administered by the New Mexico Finance Authority, the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund. This program is a loan and not a grant. The program was expanded in the 2021 session to make available nearly $500 million to provide loans to businesses that experience financial hardship resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Eligibility is listed on the slide. A business must have had an annual net revenue of less than $5 million in 2019 or 2020 and experience substantial disruption or decline in gross revenue. The interest rate is 1/2 of the Wall Street Journal prime rate, which right now is 1.625%, and the loan terms will be for 10 years. Eligible expenses include ordinary and necessary business expenses, and the loan amount is 3 times the average monthly expenses from 2019 or 2020, and the loan amount is capped at $150,000. So with that, I'm going to transition to Anthony Chavez. He's the Agriculture Program Specialist at the Farm Service Agency. So let me stop sharing my screen and I will send it over to Anthony.
Well, good morning, and I hope everybody can hear me okay. Let me see if I can show my screen. Will it tell me which screen I'm showing?
You are showing your GoToWebinar screen.
Okay, so I need to move, right? How do I, let me see if I can.
There is a tab where it says which screen you're showing under the
Oh, I did something here. Is it under sharing?
Yes.
Goes.
Apologize, guys. The technology is not on our side today. Here we go.
I know.
See,
Do you see my
I just see the slides, not the presenter version, but just the slides.
let me see.
There we go. Perfect.
Now you see the presenter version?
Success. All right. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, good morning. And thank you for bearing with me on the technology side of things. So my name is Anthony Chavez, and I am one of 5 program specialists with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency in Albuquerque. And my area is in the farm program side. So we have quite a few different programs that go along with Farm Service Agency. So I'm going to try to give you a brief overview of pretty much just my area. But if you have questions at the end, I'll try and answer them. I'm probably going to move a little fast through things, so please kind of bear with me. So what is the Farm Service Agency? So we're a department or an agency within the Department of Agriculture, and we provide, we have 2 sides, programs and loans. And our responsibility is to help farmers and ranchers and our partner organizations in providing food and fiber to the people in New Mexico. Again, my area of expertise or my area of responsibilities is under farm programs. So that's the main ones I'm going to be talking about today. And the first 4 programs what's on my list under disaster programs is the Livestock Forage program. So you have to understand, Farm Service Agency is pretty much the price support for USDA and for farmers and ranchers. So whenever we have a natural disaster or some kind of disaster event, it defaults to FSA as far as to provide assistance to farmers and ranchers. To, like currently right now with the hurricanes in the south, our WHIP Plus programs will start kicking in as far as the wildfire, hurricane, and indemnity programs. But here in New Mexico, the main programs that we utilize and that we oversee, and we see a lot of people taking advantage of, are the 6 programs that you see on the slide right now. So the first 4 programs are what I call trigger programs. And what happens with those is that something has to trigger those programs before they go into effect. So for the Livestock Forage program, this is a program that producers in New Mexico that have farms or ranches that some kind of natural disaster to their forage, whether it's on federal lands, either wildfire or drought conditions, or something happens that it destroys their forage, can get compensated. Now, again, it's a trigger program, which means that we either had to have a wildfire happen in the state, or drought has to be determined by the U.S. Drought Monitor. Once it reaches to that level, it triggers the Livestock Forage program. The FSA will start sending out notices. Mainly our notices are done electronically. We don't do any postcards anymore. Everything's being done electronically. So we send out text messages, electronic messages through our Gov delivery system. So the Livestock Forage program, once it is triggered, then producers are compensated for the loss of their forage, either through wildfire or through drought, up to 5 payments, monthly payments of what that compensation would be during the growing season. And again, that is a trigger program. The next trigger program is our livestock indemnity program. Again, LFP, which is the forage, covers the actual grass. Livestock indemnity covers the actual animals or the livestock themselves. So if we have a natural disaster that would harm or kill livestock, then the livestock indemnity program would take effect. In New Mexico, a few years ago, we had the Goliath storm on the east side back in 14 or 15 and 16, I believe, and that triggered the livestock indemnity program for any of the livestock or the cattle that were lost to the producers. So once that declaration is made, then we can go into effect and start making payments to those producers. The other things that happen as far as livestock indemnity program is lightning. Lightning is a very big issue with ranchers. You get livestock that are around a stock tank or at a stock tank, lightning will hit the stock tank and it'll actually kill all the animals that are drinking in the stock tank because it basically electrocutes them. So if you have those types of natural disasters, they are covered under the livestock indemnity program. Once they are triggered, then the office can start letting people know about those benefits that they can receive. Prior to the Farm Bill, which is right now we're in Farm Bill 15 and 14, you had to have actually an emergency declaration given by the secretary or the president, and you had to make those requests or the administrator. Because the Farm Bill now has these programs within the Farm Bill, they're already allocated, so you no longer have to actually have a declaration from the secretary. So these are standing programs now, and you can access them just because they are triggered. So the other program that's also one of our trigger programs is our Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, which is ELAP. ELAP is the catch-all. It's the one that whatever's not covered under LFP or LIP or LIP falls to ELAP. And so those are wildfires on public lands, on state lands, drought conditions for water hauling. Again, these are all triggered by natural disasters. Also, our honeybee populations are covered under our ELAP, which is our Emergency Livestock Assistance. So if you raise honeybees, whether you're in an urban setting or a rural setting, you can get coverage for your honeybees based on a natural disaster. If we have a freeze that would kill the colonies or colony collapse disorder or some type of disaster for the honeybees, we can actually compensate our producers of our honeybee population. We also compensate them for low pollination, and when nectar flows aren't flowing as enough, we can help offset some of that food storage for the honeybees that they can get compensated for. The last trigger program that we have, we don't see much use in the tree assistance program, but it is. So where our NAP program, and I'll talk about that more in depth, covers the actual fruit and the crops themselves. The tree assistance program actually covers the vines or the actual trees of the producers' orchards. So the tree assistance program, again, natural disaster, if we have a freeze and it actually kills the trees, whether we had a pecan orchard or in 2011, we had several vineyards throughout the state that were hit with a heavy freeze that actually killed off a lot of the vines. And so they were eligible for assistance through our tree assistance program. So the last two programs are the ones that are most widely used in the state of New Mexico. It's our non-insured crop disaster assistance program, NAP, and then our newest one that just came about starting in July was the pandemic assistance for timber harvesters and haulers, and that was kind of the program that EDD asked for me to kind of go over and talk about. So I'm going to give a real more in-depth talk about these two programs. And I'm going to start off with NAP, since NAP is our biggest program. So our non-insured crop disaster assistance program is kind of like an insurance. So it provides financial assistance to producers for yields or losses of their inventory that occurred to a natural disaster. That includes drought, excessive moisture if we have too much rain, which we have had here lately in some areas of the state, you can get compensated for freeze or anything to your crops associated with a natural disaster. The crop has to be non-insurable by RMA, so the actual crop insurance that is given to our farmers and ranchers is actually run by the Risk Management Agency, and they are the actual carriers of crop insurance, but they don't insure everything. So if it's not insured under RMA crop insurance, then the FSA can cover those crops within the state. You have to apply by closing dates. Again, it's just like an insurance. We have different closing dates for different crops, depending on what type of crop. And there is a fee associated with NAP. So it's and the producer is responsible for paying that fee unless they are covered under an underserved population or an SDA, where then the fee would be waived. So deadlines are big with the NAP program, and you have to make sure that you meet those requirements. Our application for coverage, which is your first one, you got to have that in by the closing date. All producers are supposed to turn in their acreage reports, how much they have in acreage, what they're reporting, what they're going to be growing. When they're if they do have a notice of loss where they have a natural disaster that hits, they need to notify our office within 15 days of harvest, or when it became apparent. And then, of course, if they are wanting payment or compensation, they have 60 days after the coverage period ends to make sure that those applications are in so that they can get payment on it. So again, we have several different application closing dates. So it's the responsibility of our producers to make sure that they know what their closing dates are, when they got to apply. We don't have late file provisions on several of these, so you have to make sure that you got your applications in within the time frame. So for instance, right now we're getting into onions, garlic, our floriculture and our aquaculture and sod grasses. September 1st is the deadline to apply for any coverage for those applications. Those are all done the year prior to the growing season. So we're taking applications now for 2022. So 2021 is already gone. We're taking applications starting for the next year. Our next closing dates are going to be on the 30th. Those tend to be our grain crops, barley, oats, triticale, wheat, those types of crops. And then our fruit and stone fruit and vines and grapes fall in November. And then our native grass, which is going to be our ranchers, can also get compensated for grass and honey and lettuce, and that's going to be December 1. So those are really important dates, because if you miss those dates, then you're not eligible to get coverage for next year. So with that, the other program that just came out, and it was an allocation under the CARES Act, which was $200 million, was our pandemic assistance for timber harvesters and haulers. And so this is money that FSA will be providing critical support to our timber harvesting and hauling businesses that were impacted by COVID outbreak through the PATH program. So in working with our state forestry and the U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service, we've identified several producers that could be eligible for compensation due to PATH. So also wood haulers do fall in this category. So people that go to the forest that have permits to haul wood or harvest wood and process it and haul it out could be eligible for PATH. They just have to provide documentation to show it. I'm going to kind of go through what you have to have. So to be defined, you have to be some of the definitions. Timber, of course, what you would constitute timber are trees or logs harvested from forest lands. They include that have been minimally processed on site in the forest before transportation from forest lands. So we're talking about timber harvesters. So a timber harvesting business is a business also known as a logging business with its gross revenue derived from one of the following: either cutting timber, cutting and transporting timber or producing wood chips on the forest land itself. So to be classified as this, it's really imperative that the timber haulers and harvesters are under a NASIS code, which is, they have a very specific NASIS code on what they have to have, which is the 113310 for tax purposes. And they need to have that when they start applying. So a timber hauling business, which was what I was just explaining, the big deals are that they must have those classifications in their NASIS codes if they're hauling or if they're harvesting. So the NASIS code classified under hauling are the 484220 or the 484230 for tax purposes. They've had to have filed that with their IRS form 2290 to be for their logging vehicles. They had to have done that for both years 2019 and 2020. So this is key in the eligibility for making sure that their timber hauling applications are eligible. Now, that being said, there are provisions that have been given as of not too long ago by our secretary that is delegated authority to our county committees that if producers have these codes or they do not have the IRS forms, that they can provide certain documentation to the county committees to prove that they are in the timber hauling business or the timber harvesting business. In doing so, that's going to be up to the county committees to make that determination based on the documentation provided. So to be eligible for payment, persons or legal entities must be in operation as a timber harvester or hauler during some portion or both of January 1st, 2019 through December 1st of 2019 and January 1st, 2020 through December 1st of 2020. So they have to be in operation for both years or part of both years. Note the timber operations that experience seasonal fluctuations during the applicable time periods will be considered in operation during the entire path period. The business must have had at least a 10% gross revenue loss when comparing their loss to 2020 period with the 19 period. So we're looking at a comparison between 2019 and 2020. And if they had a 10% gross revenue loss, then they would be eligible. The business must have a 50% or more of its gross revenue derived from timber harvesting and timber hauling or both during those same two periods between 19 and 20. And you also need to be aware of that the periods for 19 and 20 are not full calendar years. Okay, they end on December 1st. So ineligible applicants, we're getting quite a few people that are inquiring that actually are ineligible. So the following types of applications are ineligible for PATH: any person that's not a citizen of the U.S. or a lawful alien, any legal entity or joint operation with a member at any level of ownership within the entity who is not a citizen of the United States or a lawful alien, any person or legal entity that fails to provide names and tax ID numbers will be ineligible, and minor children. So the following businesses are ineligible also for PATH: residential or commercial tree care, what you would consider an arborist or tree expert, residential or commercial tree care applications, methods like pruning, trimming, felling, thinning in residential or commercial built environments. Landscape services, which are construction and installation and maintenance of lawns, trees, yards, shrubs, garden patios, related grounds, and other outdoor areas which are owned by others. So those are not eligible. And probably the one that is really hard to determine is timber brokers. We do have a number of timber brokers. They buy and sell stands of timber and logs. They can work independently or directly for mills, but a timber broker is not eligible as a timber hauler or harvester. So how do you apply for PATH? It's really simple. It's a one-page application. It's an FS 1118, and it can be submitted by any of the following methods. You can pick one. You can get one online, and you can fill it out and bring it into the office, one of our field offices. You can mail it in as long as it's postmarked by our deadline. The deadline is October 15th, so those need to be submitted by October 15th. Also electronically, it can be scanned, faxed, of course, emailed. You can find those applications on our farmers.gov Path Online applications. And you don't need to, most producers, they can register for a level 2 e-auth, but they don't need to. So again, you're going to need some necessary forms. All these forms are CEDs, our county executive directors, and our program technicians in our offices are more than willing to help you fill them out and make sure that you have your applications in order. So you're going to need our customer data sheets. These are forms specific to Farm Service Agency and the USDA. You're going to need a 901, which is your business plan. Your AD 2106 is an optional form. The 1026 is our conservation, making sure that you're adhering to our conservation practices. And then of course the 1118, which is the application, and then the IRS 2290. So just as a follow-up on everything that I've been talking about, these are specific to PATH. You need to remember the period that we're talking about is 2019 and 20, is January 1st to December 1st of both years. The producers can apply between July 22nd, which is now, through October 15th. That is the deadline. And there are no late file provisions, so they have to be in by or post-dated by October 15th. Eligible applicants must have a 10% or greater revenue loss when comparing 2020 and 2019. And eligible applicants must have 50% or more of their gross revenue come from timber harvesting or hauling for 2020 and 2019. Applicants must provide their personal business code, their NASIS codes on the FSA 1118. Again, there are special provisions that have been granted authority, delegation of authority to the county committees if applicants do not have those business codes or they do not have the IRS codes, that there's documentation that the county committees can ask for to show that they're in the active business of timber harvesting and hauling. Direct and common attributions do not apply. Minor children are not eligible. Of course, foreign persons are not eligible for PATH payments. And because they only allocated so many dollars to PATH, depending on how many applications we get, is going to depend on what the final payment is. So once the application is done, the initial payment will not be more than $2,000 up front. At the end of the application period, when they find out how many applications and how much money is available, then they will do final payment, and they do have the right to factor that out. If they can't make up 100% of the payment, they can factor it out based on how many applications we have. So those are the main programs that I do, but there's always questions with FSA on what other programs we have. Again, we have other support programs, but probably the biggest ones fall to our farm loans program. That's on the other side of the shop. I don't deal with the farm loans very much. We have specialists in 4 areas of the state that provide loans to help family farmers to start their business or expand their farming operation. They're broken down into farm ownership loans and operating loans. Our big loans right now are our micro loans. Those are $50,000 one-page loans that as long as you can show you're actively in farming and you can make $1,000, then you can get a micro loan within USDA. And then of course we have youth loans where we will loan to youth that are starting a project or are an FFA or 4-H or some kind of supervised project under an adult, and they can get a youth loan. The thing about our farm loans program is we do want our money back. So we are loaning you the money to do your operations at very low interest, but we do expect payments. And with that, for any more information, you can get in touch with us through farmers.gov. You can also get a hold of us through our field offices. We have one in almost every county. In our service centers, we're partnered with rural development, with NRCS, our Natural Resource Conservation Service. So most of us have offices throughout the state. We are having to adhere to COVID conditions, so we are taking appointments if you need to meet with somebody in our offices. And with that, I am done.
Well, great. That was really helpful. I know, it's very helpful information. I did learn a lot. There hasn't been any questions that came through, but once again, I'll be sending the slides and the recording of this presentation. And again, apologize for the technical difficulties, but that's kind of the norm now. Anthony, thank you so much. This was very helpful, and I'll review the slides later as well.
Okay. Did I give you back control? I don't know if I did.
No, we're just going to go ahead and close it out. So thank you everybody for attending, and I'll let you know about what the topic is for next month's New Mexico Recovery Series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that went okay.
Oh, there we go.